to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing Murder for Two. We saw this production at Stephen Joseph Theatre, Scarborough, on the 10th of April 2026. Murder for Two was written by Joe Kenoshan, book and music, and Kellen Blair, book and lyrics, and directed by Caroline Leslie for Stephen Joseph Theatre and Octagon Bolton, and is a hilarious, fast-paced musical whodunit with a twist. Two actors play 13 characters, and the piano. So Richard, what's it all about?
When famous novelist Arthur Whitney is found dead at his birthday party, it's time to call in the detectives. The only problem is they're out of town. Enter Officer Marcus Moscovich, a neighbourhood cop who dreams of climbing the ranks. With the clock ticking, it's up to Marcus to prove his super sleuthing skills and solve the crime before the real detective arrives.
But first, our post-show opinion! Energetically insane and brilliantly bonkers.
It's Madcap Murder Mayhem.
So, with all that said, let's
Set the scene.
Murder for Two then, Richard. Would you like to set the scene?
I can.
Go on then.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff. So we walked into the Stephen Joseph Theatre, and it was quite chaotic. The set was. You had got a lot of stuff that looked like it was meant to, really, as in if you imagine what The Archers is like when you're actually recording the show, a radio play, it is a set surrounded by noise-making materials, so things like a door you can shut, a window you can shut and open, a grand piano, a set of stairs, you've got rugs on the floor for sound purposes, so things didn't make noise that shouldn't, so you've got rugs under everything. You'd also got cups, jugs, boxes of more noise-making things, so like trumpets, and then you got a table with a microphone on it that had got other. It was almost like your weather-making noises and things like that. So
just sound effects.
Sound
stuff,
effects
isn't it,
in
really?
general.
A tray of gravel for footsteps and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and then you'd got some old-fashioned lights that would have been in the in old TV studios or radio studios. And that was basically it, really. So you were just in this almost chaotic madcap world, really.
Like a den for actors.
Yeah,
with all their toys.
It almost looked like a prop room that you'd find in the BBC. That I think that's the, it was just a load of stuff hanging around. You didn't know if it was going to be used or if it was just for set dressing, really. So.
Yes. Okay, so this play starts off with it being in a BBC broadcasting house where they're recording the play of a murder, which then they start doing a lot of sound effects to that extent because somebody has died within this play and they have to obviously find out who committed the murder. But within this play, because it is sort of like a play within a play, I felt, that they steered away from recording the live play. So it's like they forgot completely that they were doing that. They went through the motions of being the detective, living that play, but then going to use the sound effects for it, but it stopped becoming recording the live play. It was like living within it throughout.
I think also the bit that I don't know if you picked up on what I did was when it started, the whole premise was there was meant to be more cast members turning up to record the actual murder, the murder play, but but they announced over the gallery that there's nobody else turning up. You two have got to do it, and we're going live.
Yeah.
So and then that seemed to disappear after that. Like you're left on your own to do it.
Yeah.
There was no other gallery moments, or it was like now you're on your own, off you go. And like you say, I feel like that almost, in a way, mirrored the production, because the detective had the same sort of life where he was left on his own to be the detective, and nobody turned up to help him be the detective. And it was a similar thing, but it disappeared after that very first scene almost.
Yes, and I think for me, because it played too much on the actual play of the murder mystery, it forgot completely about the production of the recording of it.
Exactly.
And I think had they have been, even if it was a pre-recorded producer saying, like, putting the pressure on to record this, or don't forget that if they were like following a script, and it was being chaotic, and then such appears. Oh, car, quick! We can do that with sound effects, and then rush to go and do that, and then coming back and stuff.
But the script disappeared very quickly, because at first they started with it in the hands, and then it went. Like there was one there at the start, and then it just did. And I get why they took it out of the way for the physicality, but there's no. For me, it was almost like there was no pause moments throughout the production where it was like, where do we go now? Because if there's only two of them trying to do this, and they've been left to it because other people haven't turned up, there was no like, we need a suspenseful music break here to quickly rustle through the script to work out where we are next, and then so it went off air, and then back on it. There was no moments like where you brought you back into the radio play element of it. And maybe that's how it's written, but it
has elements of like a noise is off in a way.
Yeah, it does,
doesn't it? Like with the if there was a director coming in and shouting at them, get this ready, get that, and don't forget you got this prop to go back out on. Oh, where the sardines. On this one, it could have lent in a little bit more to that chaotic world.
Yeah, that sort of was left behind right at the start.
It really was, and also I think because Tom just played the one character, the detective, are we to take it that he was originally cast as that person anyway?
Yeah, when we were led to believe that he didn't know what he was going to be doing, sort of thing.
Were these people just sound effects within the department? So they didn't. They weren't the cast, but they just did the sound effects.
Exactly.
But then they've got to actually portray these characters. Yeah. And I think that's where there's a little.
I think
sort of like disappearing of the point of this. And like aesthetics and where they've put this to actually the murder mystery play itself. Yeah. They want to tell that story in a funny way.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like they've forgotten that it's set in this recording studio. Yeah. So we've got to remember adding elements of that in it to keep it on track.
And I think that's where my first 20 minutes were like, I was a little bit rabbit in the headlights.
So was I, because it was like information everywhere.
And I think that's where the writing of this, it was very top heavy right at the start, and then it petered away, like it didn't have a flow through that bit. But the rest of it was great. It was just that first 20 minutes seemed to be a little bit like, what's going off?
Yeah, it was like trying to get on a pedal bike at high speed straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
High gear straight away. Yeah. And it was just difficult to turn the cogs because like even like the first couple of songs, I think the first one was called Protocol Saves.
Yeah.
And I just felt at that point I was a little bit lost because it was thrown in the musical element of it as well. Like even some of the lyrics weren't about them trying to make a production live broadcast murder mystery play.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes any kind of logical sense there.
Yeah.
And also because Lucy was playing different characters, she introduced us to about 4 or 5 characters straight away, immediately.
Moments, yeah.
So then because she like flipped between one and the other, and then the other and the other, I was very much like, all this information overload, we've got all this going on, different kind of characters going on, nothing really separated them or identified them. And I was like, it was chaotic and a mess.
And I think the other thing that got me with that first part was the initial murder.
Yeah.
Because it sort of happened, but I still we'd not even met the character, and they
Yeah.
were murdered. We didn't really know who that was
Yes.
because we never
Or
really
why.
heard them.
Or
All
why
we heard
anybody
was a
cared.
door go and then two books being thrown
Yeah.
and a gunshot. But it was a bit like we've heard all these other characters be introduced, but this one, because they'd not walked through the door,
Yeah.
they got shot instantly, and it was a bit like, but we don't actually know.
Yeah.
And this is where the writing bit like got confusing for me, because I'm like, normally you have to know that the character's got a
Yeah.
reason for people to want to murder them, but we never met him.
No.
So,
Exactly,
and he's
yeah.
just a pile of books on the floor, which was fine after that bit.
Yeah.
But it was that build up to that murder just felt a little bit like, what? You know?
Because it is a play within the play, so you need to know the reason why that character got murdered in the
Exactly,
first place
yeah.
and what was the reason behind that. But also the actors portraying that, you need to know a reason behind why. Mind you, I suppose you did get a reason why they were doing
Yeah, we
that
did,
because actors didn't turn up.
I feel as well. There was a moment where we learned a lot about all the suspects, and it took a while for us to learn about him
Yes.
that was murdered. And I think rather than it's like that first bit, we could have just had a little bit more of him written
Yeah.
into it to actually know who he is, even if he was on his own at a different location or something like that.
And I think that comes down to information overload, information dumping.
Yeah.
Straight at the very beginning.
Yeah,
Of okay, this has happened. This is a new inciting incident. Get on with it.
yeah,
But then when you've got the introduction of all the characters straight away,
Yeah.
plus we're having to deal with them doing the sound effects.
yeah. And I think
stuff,
I
it's-
think as well, because those other characters are developed throughout the rest of the production as well.
Yeah,
So you get to know who they are,
yeah,
but you never get to know who the person murdered is
yeah,
because he's already dead. You know, you get to know a few bits, but you don't get to know where he fits in to that.
And I feel probably what could have helped or aided is in a little less piano in that particular scene where all these suspects were being
Yeah.
introduced, because you could have had, like, when the French person was there, this woman, you know, Tom could have played, if he could, the French horn,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something sassy like the sultrous
Yeah.
person.
Something different,
You know,
yeah.
each character could have had like a musical cue.
Yeah, a bit like Cluedo with different colours. It's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
different music
Or
accents
hints
almost.
at
Yeah.
it, so that would add a little bit more
Yeah.
like pressure to quick. I've got to press this,
Yeah.
or I've got to do that, or I've got to
Yeah.
blow this, and
Yeah.
so on. So yeah, it was at the very beginning. It was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
It's too much. But I suppose at the end of it, we did really like it.
Oh, yeah,
and it
definitely.
was thoroughly enjoyable and entertaining. But I do think perhaps
I think once we're on the
bigger-
motorway, it was good. As in
it's just getting to it.
Yeah,
That was
it
a chore,
yeah.
because I think a lot of people just looked a little lost and a bit confused and like,
Yeah.
what is this? And I know I'm not alone in that,
Yeah.
because a few people said it whilst I was waiting in the lobby. But yeah, I think the writing wasn't too bad, but it did need grounding in that
Yes.
recording
Yeah.
studio a little bit more.
Yeah.
And for us to really understand the characters at the beginning a little bit better.
Yeah.
Better introduction, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else on the writing?
I think we summed that up quite well, to be fair.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the musical numbers were good as well.
They were,
I quite
yeah.
liked them. They were nice little ditties, a little
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah.
I could definitely listen to them again.
Yeah.
Not many were memorable, though, saying that. Apart
There were more
from the So What
supporting
If.
songs, like supporting roles in the production, I
Yes,
feel like. They were
yeah.
like, rather than stand out individual songs, they were like part of the narrative
Yeah.
almost.
Because there was a few like play a little, sing a little this, and then go do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just to go back to setting the scene, that whilst we're all waiting for everyone to take to their seats and for it to start with the prelude to
Yeah.
it, with him doing the preset, Tom doing the preset, there was some Cole Porter songs
Yes,
going
there
on,
was.
and
Yeah.
those kind of the
Yeah.
era.
Yeah,
so
to
it,
take you into that world.
yeah, that was quite. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
That was quite good.
I mean, one of the things that we picked up as well is there was some nods to modern day items. So we don't know if that was written in the production or if it was ad-libbed. And something we commented on is that we couldn't work out, there was sort of took it out of the time period. So we couldn't work out if it was added in just as a bit of a nod, nudge and a wink to the audience, or if it was there was just a couple of moments, like there was not Uber, but it was like there was Just Eat mentioned, or was it?
I don't mind that if it was them ad-libbing to the audience members, but I think within the script itself, but this is you don't really know if the bun on the script will come off it, but there were certain things like that were slightly updated.
Yes. Yeah, there was.
That was a bit like
putting Bridlington in, little bits like referencing places.
I suppose I'm not too fussed about the local things, but at the same time, if it's set in BBC Broadcasting House, which is London,
exactly,
in 1959, can we please keep it in that area and keep it in that time place? If you're on script doing it.
Because you look at things like Around the Horn and stuff like that, and all those sort of productions, and you think, and Archers as well. It's like they're all very specific in their location, aren't they?
So the director for this one was Caroline Leslie, and I thought she did a great job at directing this piece. But also there was a movement director called Emily Holt, and between them they clearly worked really, really well in getting this chaotic, energetic madcap play onto its feet and
completely
it sorted around in the round. I mean, my goodness.
One thing I'd say to you is I'd love to see their blocking information, and how they block this entire production, because just to or shall we say, put a tracker on each of these characters to see how much they moved around that set, because I think they covered every inch of the stage.
Well, Lucy needs a stepometer on her.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
She's certainly got steps in.
Yeah,
on each
totally. Definitely more than 39.
Yeah, but it was just incredible. I don't think there's anything I would have changed or have issue with in terms of the direction of it, because I think they were very strict in their notes when saying make sure you turn to this audience member for this line, or address this section of the audience for that, or don't forget over here.
If you've
look
done
over
that
your
there,
shoulder
you're doing
here.
that the opposite way there, and you're doing that there, and it's like very. It felt very caring to an in the round audience.
Yeah,
but I also think this is a type of production that you'd struggle to do it in a large audience or with a large room, because I think the intimacy and the direction of what you're doing, everybody in the audience needs to feel like they're in that space. And I think I'm glad I saw it in the size of venue we saw it in, because you need that that studio feel, like that solid, theatre feel, that you're not too distant from it.
Mind you saying that, this kind of thing, it could probably work in an amphitheatre.
It could do, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in a studio, but that setting where people are surrounded by it and you can open up to them. Yeah. I think if it was on just a very typical stage high up,
I think for me as well, it some productions can be lost when you go past, the third row or whatever, as in looking at the audience. But this, you'd have all had a piece of the action. That's it's like feel like everybody got something out of it.
Definitely, yeah. You can clearly see as well that the actors they took their direction well, and they just went with it. Well. It's when you see a production, you see that if you've been a director and you've directed people, and then you say, right, the play's yours now. Yeah. Go for it. Just go with it.
Yeah, I can't do any more. Yeah.
They clearly did that, and they went along with it. It felt like they were very much in charge.
Yeah, exactly.
And their confidence levels were very high. You felt safe with them, and nothing slipped. And it's like watching a live show where they're doing stand up,
It is, yeah,
but
definitely.
with stand up with stuff.
Stuff and yeah,
Props.
just yeah, and
You know.
well, yeah, musical comedians that can just turn their hand to anything, but also create make believe from piles of stuff as well, isn't it? That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like it's playing dress up a lot of the time. And
Absolutely, yeah. And for this production, we had Jess Curtis as the designer for the whole staging of this, and we had the scenic artist Julia Ray, who brought all those little extra bits that we saw. Whether it's the radio that will work, not just the grand piano, I might add. You know, the steps, the telephone, the period pieces, the sound effects things, and everything dotted around the chair, the window that was used, even down to the carpets
exactly.
and the throws. You know, it all was very much fitting within that. Well, they decorated the space really well.
They did, yeah. They did.
You know, I just thought it was just amazing how they all knitted together.
Yeah, exactly.
As a team. But the thing is, we see this a lot at Stephen Joseph Theatre, don't we?
Yeah.
You can tell a great deal that all heads of department or those working in the departments work really well. They cross-pollinate their ideas really well.
Yeah,
and they all go to make a solid end product.
Yeah, and it's clear they've got a clear direction of how they were going to make this look, how they were going to pull it off. You know what the staging of it was going to be like, because it's very easy to think, well, we just need a load of stuff on stage. Yeah, but it's got to have purpose. It's got to have meaning, and it's got to be specific. You know, even to have the little box on stage hide the that became something that stood on to test the microphone, actually had a prop under it ready for the second half for one gag that was there all the time, that actually had a piece of equipment hidden under it that didn't look like it was ever going to be moved or anything, but it was there for a very specific purpose, and so everything was placed for a reason. You know?
But it's funny because there's a lot of props that was only used once.
Yeah.
The French horn, for example, the fly thing, the little well, pretty much everything apart from the telephone that got used a lot on the door.
Yeah,
the bigger pieces got used a lot. Also, to note that they were strategically placed like little cups of water.
Yeah,
for
there was.
Mostly Lucy.
Yeah.
And a little wipe your brow for your sweat, have a drink, get back on it.
I also like that the coffee jug was full of water. So if the bottles had run out, there was water in there to try and have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But it was just water. So it was still another opportunity to have a drink.
Exactly.
Or,
and it never really bothered me that it wasn't coffee. I mean, I thought at the time, I suppose you could just put Coke in it because you could be drinking black coffee.
Yeah.
But I'm not really bothered.
But it was
don't forget, it's BBC sound effects. So it's not going to be coffee.
No, it isn't.
Is it?
No. And it's also like, even by the piano, there was a jug with a handle under the desk with a straw in it, ready for them to just refresh wherever they were. There was something to, because it was physical and they couldn't leave stage.
No.
They got no chance to walk off and have a drink. They had to do it while they were on and doing something. But they had to. I feel like they'd almost marked the script at where they could drink while the other one's doing something, or they'd specifically marked. You know, it's a little bit like the scene in Book of Mormon with Man Up, where he does his scene all the way across the balcony, and right at the end there's a bottle of water waiting for him in the set, and it's like. It's exactly the same. You know, Elder Cunningham's going all the way across, and he ends at that last scene, and there's a bottle of water waiting for him after he's done a full performance and a massive vocal number. He just knows there's always going to be a drink there because he needs it.
Exactly.
And it was exactly the same in this, where it was like there were strategic points in the production.
Yeah, I mean, they got us so far on their side that it didn't particularly matter if they just said, "Hang on a minute, I need a swig or something."
Exactly.
Even if
and
it
borrowed somebody's
right
drink on the stage. Obviously,
who cares? But it was quite good. There was a couple of things actually that, thinking about it, that I thought they could have actually done something with. They had tap dancing shoes, so Lucy brings these tap dancing shoes from under the grand piano, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if the script just said that these two characters did like a tap dance routine, and it's like the Tom and then Lucy had to like panic, thinking, "How are we going to do this?" And then instead of them tap dancing, they literally put the shoes on their hands and just did the whole thing right in front of the microphone in the middle, just so it sounded like they were tap dancing. They could have done a whole vaudeville thing with these tap dancing shoes in their hands, because obviously we're playing with it being about sound effects for the radio. And another thing that I noticed was when that female stagehand, she walked in and off occasionally. I can't credit her because I don't know who she ended up who she was in this. But remember when a banana got thrown off, and when Lucy did it, I think it was a banana, and it hit a cat, and then Tom threw something off. I can't remember what that.
Person.
Exactly, a person. And they could have actually made something where she came on stage and it'd been like she'd have got pelted and covered with a bit of banana on it. It's like, guy, what's going on? And then just walked off. She didn't have to say anything, but she could have just worn something where it looked like she'd been hit or a banana on her or something. Yeah. And just did a bit of what do you call it? Mime.
Yeah.
And just walk back off again.
Just picking up on the tap dancing bit. They did do that. She did. Lucy did do the tap dancing on the tray, on the wooden tray. Yeah. So she did some of that in her hands and made it. But then,
again, it wasn't like
I think for
utilised fully.
I think what I was going to say is there's. I feel like even though they were doing vaudeville, they didn't. Apart from the final performance, there wasn't many duo routines within it. But were fully vaudeville.
No,
there was a few moments, but it wasn't like there was. It was nods to vaudeville. But
I mean, they did like the can high kicks and leg kicks and stuff. Mostly Lucy.
Yeah.
Because the inspector wouldn't have done any of that much.
No.
But also the character of was it Lucy or Luke, the inspector person? Do you remember the inspector had his?
Oh, you mean Lou?
Lou, that was it.
Yeah, so Lou was the inspector, the invisible inspector.
Invisible inspector,
that was a short man that was being paraded around a lot, and it was just a figment of our imagination.
Yeah, that got a bit confusing sometimes as to because again, talking about doubling up, if Tom is playing the inspector, why couldn't he have doubled up and put on an accent and done somebody else as well?
Yeah.
Because it was very heavy-sided.
It was
that
heavy,
Lucy would play more.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think perhaps what they could have done is if Tom took on the role of a female and he would... Do you know what I mean? They could have done a little bit more of that, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very weighted to Lucy having to do a lot of the difference where, and I can understand a core character being a constant, but when it's a two-hander, there's a bit of a leeway there to do different.
But again,
parts.
If we cut back to when we saw the brilliant Cecile, Hand of the Baskervilles, Sherlock Holmes is Watson.
Yeah,
Alice, she not only played Watson, Dr. Watson, but she played like the farmhands.
Yes.
Those like the dumb
supplementary
people.
Character.
Exactly. And we still knew
their
main roles.
Well,
even Sherlock, Alex Phelps, when he was Sherlock, he was playing all these other characters, as was Tom Richardson.
Exactly.
So Tom Babbage in this one could have still played those individual other different roles as well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to know. I mean, I do need to look into the script a bit more to work out if it actually how it lists it. But because it might just be how it's written more than
probably. But it does feel like.
I get you. I totally get your point. It could have done that.
Yeah, it just needs. I feel a little like balancing.
Yes.
And the intro slightly tweaking.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I don't think there is.
I think we've done really well.
Well done.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're here for the drama. Let's talk about the whole cast. The two of them.
Well, this won't take long, will it?
Exactly. So, Marcus Moscovich was played by Tom Babbage, and All the Suspects was played by Lucy Keel.
Yes.
Weren't they fantastic?
Amazing.
Absolutely fantastic. There.
I think physical comedy and movement and adaptiveness to the space they were in, and being they were very. It's hard to sort of put in perspective, but they were very aware of the walls that were containing their production.
Yeah.
As in the walls of the room that they were in, and if they've got to go to answer, like for example, Marcus had to go and answer the phone, but the phone was outside the room and down the side of the room, past the dogs, past the window, and he had to recreate that every time. Otherwise, you don't paint your picture that this has got walls, and you've got to keep doing that so the audience still see that space when they do things like that. And I thought it was really clever. It was a bit like, for me, the fine example was Lucy when she was going through the door as different characters constantly, and she just kept walking around the door, but all those people were going off upstairs to hide away or whatever, and you just every time she walked through that door, she was a different person, and it was.
I mean, it takes some skill to do all that movement, and you do have to learn your craft and work at it. I mean, it's a bloody chore getting out of bed,
and then to remember, then you've got to have a different accent or a different voice or a different
movement, different facial expression. Oh. Yes, I think there was a great part in this which wasn't scripted, but it had something to do with the phone going off.
Yes,
and
it was an audience member.
Yeah, and they sort of broke character, and it came at just the right time where they were talking about something, and they brought it into effect there, and then they just adapted it to be about them having a delivery of a takeaway or something like that, and then they used the door to make a bit of a joke at it. But this is a kind of production where, because they're already inviting the audience along with them to tell a story or retell a story by being like slapdash vaudevillian in style and making anything out of nothing, they get the audience members involved. And it just really works, and it makes everything more exciting.
It really does.
And fun, especially when they start picking on audience members. Not in like a harsh way.
No.
But if someone's got a really disturbing laugh, or if someone's sitting uncomfortably, or if someone dislikes something, then it's like, oh, they don't like that,
Exactly.
And it's all that kind of atmosphere which they create. And they work well by going away from the script. Sometimes at the detriment to the script by slowing the production down, but they're entertaining at the end of the day, and that's what keeps you gripped throughout, is their performance style and how they deliver their energy and their performance, and them just being on stage. And I do think that Lucy in particular was a standout, more so slightly because of the fact that she had so many characters to play, because she was playing all the suspects, and to go from one character to the next, to the next, to the next, at the drop of a hat or a turn of a face or just a slight movement. No wonder she was wiping her brow from sweating all the time. I mean, they both did, but she was just insanely talented. Well, they both were insanely talented, but she was showing more of that talent, on stage there. There was a scene where they just managed to... There was a dead body in the chair, and it was Lucy playing the character that died from having a drink of tea, I think it was, and she died. Oh no, unless that was a different character. But the character that died in the chair, because she had to then go and play the piano...
Yes.
They had to get someone out of the audience to just sit there. Yeah, and they did it really, really well. Yeah. So that's just part of the audience interaction. That was entertaining. But sometimes, you see shows where some actors just don't like being like going off script or can't go off script because they don't know what to say or what to do or interacting with audience members. It's
but also stay in the zone. They've got to stay on script and keep going and
or know where
they're going to. Yeah,
if they're coming off it and stuff. Yeah. So it's those actors really did fantastic. I
think for me it was the eye contact and the fact that that's in itself distracting, just to pick people out in the audience as they're walking past. Agreed. And have a nod and or raise the eyebrows. They've still got to remember who they are and where they are and what they're doing, and then they're still actually acknowledging the audience exists. This was a fine example of there was no fourth wall.
No.
It was gone. It was
Yeah.
broken down, but they were in control of what they did at what point, you
Yes.
know, and you could see that all the time. It was little moments for me, like when Lucy would wander off, where she was doing the scene where she's draping a tablecloth around her,
Yes,
and
yeah.
then she puts it over a cast member and sort of. And all
audience
she
member.
does to
Do you
the
mean
audience,
audience
to the audience
member?
member, and it was the audience member in front of me, and just the sleight of hand of her the sleight of her comment where she's like, and now you've had an intimate theatre experience, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, it's like all of a sudden, but that probably wasn't even in the script, but she
Yeah.
just had a nod to that being silly, but it was really a lovely moment that.
Yeah.
You felt in good hands,
Yeah.
good theatrical hands, because they're both of them. You know, for me, when Tom came out in the initial part to set everything up and make sure the mics were working and everything like that, he didn't just walk out and ignore the audience. It was like every moment he could find, he was
Oh, he was talking to the audience
acknowledging
members.
or saying something, or just bringing everybody in.
Yes.
Like, here we go. This is, you know,
Yeah.
this is going to be something that you're all going to be welcomed into
Yeah.
the room on.
And also, it's not just when they were not following the script, shall we say, when they were openly talking to the
Yeah.
audience members, like bringing them in, like there was a certain family there
Yeah.
that didn't, you know, she was trying to scare someone and
Yeah.
it didn't work,
Yeah,
you know. She did that a few times just
Yeah.
to get a reaction out of
Yeah.
people. But also when they were in the play themselves, whenever she was changing characters and she knew she had her back towards one row
yeah,
of audience members, because there was a scene where she was looking through the window
Yes.
and Tom was on the piano recreating the conversation. So she was lip syncing to it. She was turning one way so everyone could see on one side, and then when she was the other character, she put her arm through the window and changed to be somebody else and
Yeah.
made sure the other side of the room could see her. But each time, it's like they were both knowing that there was audiences all around them.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They made sure that even when playing on the piano, there was loads of times when Tom was like looking over his shoulder to your section.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you were
exactly,
at,
yeah.
and then over to the one right behind him as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then over to my
Yeah.
side. You know.
I also noticed something as well in that exact scene that you've just picked out,
Yeah.
where I don't think that's scripted.
Which bit?
That bit where she has to lip sync. Because I think what she has to
Oh,
do
are you
is
sure?
match him, because it's a typical theatre trick.
Yeah.
If he's going to say something at that point,
Yeah.
and it's actually a bit of an in-joke between the two of them, where she
Right.
doesn't know what's coming
Yeah.
in that bit, where he's
Yeah.
going to mention either a word or something,
Yeah.
and he's going to talk a bit of script, and she's got to articulate
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
he's saying, and it's not the same over. So I've seen it done in Titanic and a few other things where it's like there's one scene where actually it's all ad-libbed, and that one character controls it all, and the others don't know what's going to be done, but they've got to articulate it. And there was just a few moments where I thought, I don't think she knows what's coming
Yeah.
out of his mouth, because she'd know it off by heart because of the
Yeah.
amount of content she knew.
Yeah.
There was some moments where I thought she just doesn't know where he's going with this.
Well, the thing is, it's questionable because maybe they've rehearsed it,
Yeah.
so it looks
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they don't know.
Exactly.
But perhaps I think it's that.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I think perhaps there's a little bit where maybe at the very end, the
Yeah.
final thing, he's
Yeah.
saying whatever random things
Yeah.
happening, because he did actually say something really strange from where
Yeah.
they're from, and then she knew that.
Yeah.
Just a slight facial expression
exactly.
showed then maybe it is like you say, he's doing it on purpose to get her, because I think she did the same thing to him
Exactly.
when he said, "Where are you from?" or
Yeah.
for a particular character, and then she said it's from Bainbridgeshire
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it's like they're
It came
completely
like a bit-
making-
it's like,
yeah.
how
It's like they've got to put something in
that?
there, but they're making it up every time. Like, you know,
Boblington or something.
But-
What?
in a way, that for me, then gives them a challenge between them to make it funny and
It's
unpredictable.
electrifying.
Because then every performance, it's not the monotony of
No.
there's a bit of an on edge. It puts you
Yeah.
on that performance edge that makes you be aware of your surroundings.
And
almost.
also, it's that whole acting game,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you like, when you've got the improv and you're passing a ball from one to another.
Exactly that.
It's to make sure that the other person is going to catch it. So
Yeah.
that replicates that if you're going to put something out there and act it, that the other
Yeah.
person's got your back.
Yeah, exactly. And
You
I
know.
think as well, it wouldn't surprise me if there's things in this where some of those objects aren't the same every night that they bring out, or like the fly. The fly on
Oh,
the
no,
body,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it could be that they don't. If it doesn't always happen the same way, or they do it
Yeah.
at different points, or just to sort of to solidify that it's definitely an improv thing. But I mean, one of the things I was going to pick out as well is they
Well, you can do.
stayed in American accents throughout.
No,
What I mean is they
had a French.
no, what I mean is by the accents, I mean like they didn't show that they were British, or you know what I mean. There was no level of like everything was all character driven. Like for me, Tom stayed in an American accent throughout the whole thing, even when he's
Right.
doing improv. There was no like drop back to a even when he was playing with the audience, he was still American. And
See, this is probably what is slightly confusing because I don't think I felt it was slightly Americanized with the accent, but then because Lucy was doing different accents as well, but then because it was a BBC 1959,
that's
as well,
the
it
BBC
was a
bit
bit
didn't really come into it.
yeah.
I think for me, once we got past the first bit, I was like, actually, this is an American production. It felt American. That's what I mean.
yeah, but they could have still going off on one here. They could have just actually kept it within the American thing. I think we would have still understood it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, is there anything else you want to say on the whole thing?
I just think they're two very talented actors that need to be looked out for, and I wish them luck in whatever they do in the future because they were just very, very, very on it. And hopefully and been guided very, very well.
Yes, and to repeat, they are Tom Babbage and Lucy Keel.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, What the Tech Is This? Where I was sat in the first half, I don't know if it got changed in the second half, but it didn't seem as bad. But there was one point where I'd literally got one of the stage lights right in my eyes. But and it was one of the old converted theatre lights, which is fine, but I think it was just pointing at an angle that anybody in my area would have been a little bit like dazzled almost, because I had a few moments where I just felt a little bit dazzled by the brightness. But other than that, I mean, it was a set and stage full of chaos, and then which meant that it was easier to hide things like the cable for the telephone.
Yeah.
You could hide it under the seats and under the rugs that were on the floor. So that helped with running cables and hiding things and making things on stage work. And with the simplicity of the lighting in the corners, the on-air signs above, that helped add a bit of life to the stage, because when they were using colour use, they changed colour and did things that helped that. Again, the microphones actually worked this time, and they had mics on stage as well on the piano and hidden on the tables and things like that.
Because the preset Tom Babbage came on and did all the checks, clicking up, and even the one in the centre that came down right in the middle.
And that added to the whole radio production style of sound effects and things like that. So that worked well. And then,
ironically enough, though, this is going off tangent, there wasn't no of the time 1959 BBC microphone audio recording thing, even for show.
Yeah,
even if it was never really used.
Yeah, there was and
that could have been
It's interesting because in the production, in the actual posters, in the program, they actually referenced some of those style of mics, and there wasn't any on stage, so it would have been nice to just have that nod to original hefty, big, heavy microphones.
Yeah. Well, they did a lot of the technical sound effects themselves, didn't they? Through various objects. There was only one pre-recorded song that Lucy sang to,
Yes.
which Tom tried to thwart and turn
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
But at that time, I think there was some use of different coloured lighting. I think it went a bit green.
Yeah, there were
at
different.
times,
Each
didn't
time
they?
there was different. Yeah,
Yeah.
every time the buttons were pressed, it was a different setting and different.
Yeah.
Different feel.
I mean, it just went sort of like in stages, didn't
Yeah.
it? And then it went a little bit grand when she came out in full
Yeah.
rainbow draped sequin.
One thing that
Gown thing.
that Stephen Joseph is quite useful for is I couldn't work out. Well, I know how the effect works, but you know when the gunshot, when they shot
yes.
they shot the roof and then bits of dust fell from the roof.
Yeah.
Now you can get actuators that just drop a little that just drop a little hopper or something that drops things in. But I know that above the Stephen Joseph, somebody could be stood up there and dropping it in at the right time.
All right.
But also the same as confetti. But
Yes.
because of the gridded system above the
Yeah.
the set and the stage,
they're there.
you can't really see it. So you
Does that grid system? Because I was looking up a couple of shows back, thinking, does that lower so they can like walk on it to then change the lights and also protect anything from
I
falling
think
down?
they can just walk on it
I thought that.
without even lowering it. They just go up into that.
No,
that-
because I'm
section.
sure it lowers because it's right straight.
yeah,
straight
it must
under
it must do
So the
something
lower
like that.
it's-
I don't know.
Because it's
So-
on. It looks like it's on like
Yeah.
huge like levers that
Yeah.
come down.
But I know it's to protect the lights falling
Mm.
on anybody below and things like that because it's easier. But it's you can't actually see then above it, and it does a good
Yeah.
job of. You almost feel like you're in a TV set in some ways
Mm.
because you can't really see some of the things that are happening above it. So, so yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah, and they had some gunshots in this one.
Did
So
you? They were good.
They were good, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think the use of spatial sound was good because when you got the dogs barking outside the window and things,
Yeah.
they were coming from the positioning that you needed it to.
And this is quite good when you're seeing a show within the round.
Yes.
Because you do actually get that 3D effect
You
of
do.
gunshots or any kind
You
of
can hear
noises
the
go
distance.
from
Yeah.
the left to right, centre to the offside and whatever.
Offside.
Or
of
I should
football.
I should have just said north, south, east and west rather
Yeah,
than
yeah,
left
yeah.
and right,
Yeah.
shouldn't I, really?
Yeah, definitely.
Never mind.
No, I've done it.
Anything else for the technical
No,
bits?
nothing else.
And now it's time for
Rewind, rewatch.
For me, if I could rewind and watch this whole thing again, I would have to rewind it to the musical number. So what if I did?
Yeah.
I can't remember which particular character it was that Lucy was performing, but it was basically about, so what if I did do that? Or
Yeah.
whatever. What does it mean anyway? You
Yeah.
know, and I just thought that was so funny the way she moved around the whole set and also not just played the piano at the same time, but afterwards she there's a lot going on
I know what you mean.
within the whole production, but
Yeah.
I really liked that particular scene because there's so much different layers and different changes all the time within that song.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I would definitely rewind and rewatch the whole second half because I think that's where it picked up for me, like as a production. Yeah.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say, call this a show. To sum up, Richard.
Don't sum me up.
No, okay. Let's call this a show. I would call this a show. It was just intense. It was all over the place. It was chaotic. It was mayhem. It was a whirlwind of everything all going on. And that's quite a feat when you've only got the two actors on stage.
Yes.
It did come across very, very strong, very, very funny, extremely funny, to be honest.
Yes.
I think the highlight was being part of that intimate setting within the Stephen Joseph Theatre. So you are surrounded with everything. You see all the action.
Yes.
And the audience participation, not voluntarily, I may add, but more so because they invited certain people, either looks or getting in the way, or with a handbag getting in the way, or having certain ice creams, holding the chicken to squawk it and stuff. You know, it all became part of it, and it made the whole atmosphere fun, jolly, and it was just really, really energetic and fun. And I really like those kind of productions. We've seen several previously this year, The Hound of the Baskervilles being one. and also the Grand Hotel Babylon being another. And this is very much of that style, very vaudevillian at times as well. A couple of niggles for me throughout this production, whilst I think it's excellent, I did get a little bit lost thinking what it was about because the plot sort of like faded off a little bit because they were playing up to the audience or playing certain different things. So because it was set in a BBC broadcasting house radio studio of 1959, I was assuming we were watching them make a show, which I think they started off doing, but then it became something. It was the show.
Yeah.
So then it just sort of like deviated slightly from that. And also there was contemporary conversations or talks or notable people being pointed out or spoken about, which for 1959, it took you. Well, it didn't really take you out of it because you were sort of already out of it because of the plot went off on one. But if it was set in 1959, why? Unless you're out of character talking to the audience in current day, that's fine. But if they were in character talking about or mentioning somebody, say like Madonna, it didn't get talked about, but Madonna, for example, well, that's completely away from 1959. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
So it was just a couple of those things, but particularly in the first act, I felt it was a struggle to concentrate on what the plot was, and I think that's because of the one person playing all the characters, the suspects. Whilst she was really, really good at it, extremely good at it, you didn't particularly spend too much time with individual characters, so you wasn't quite sure which one it was because there was too many. I think that's the issue for me personally. I got a bit like, I can't remember what the plot is now, and I can't remember who that character is or what is going on.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple more views would cement it in, perhaps. But because there was an awful lot for one person, I couldn't separate it again. But that's just a negative for how I felt. But that's not to detract from the fact that it was a thoroughly enjoyable, funny, really funny, energetic production, and really good music as well. Really, really good music. And I think the writers of this, Joe and Kellen, were really, really good with the songs.
I mean, for me, I think it was the a great overall production. But I think there's some of the little writing bits that let it down in the first half, where it seemed to there was the first portion seemed to drag, and I think that was not necessarily always the cast. It was more there was a lot of information dumped right at the start. And I think that's something we've seen with a few American productions, like as in American written productions, where they tend to offload a lot of information at the start. But overall, it was a great sort of feat of engineering, really, for two characters to pull off a production like this. And I felt that that it was done really, really well. But I agree with some of the things Stephen said with the radio, the lack of radio sort of links throughout the production. There was a few bits where it drifted a little bit, and they went through all the premise of the introductions from the gallery almost, but then that never happened again in any break or any there's no break in it. It was just, but I get it because it's a live hour of radio almost, but I felt like there was nothing that put them back on track, or that the room got spoken to, or I don't know. I think
because they didn't even go back on air saying that's the end of this show.
But they were flashing the lights on air, off air, off air, on it, but then it seemed to disappear.
Because it could have cut to a commercial break.
Yeah, and
they could have done. Yeah. They could actually then
all the news, or the for me it's those bits.
They could have if they did cut to a commercial break, they could have used the characters to then to have sold something.
Yeah. I think because in a way, maybe because they put it on a BBC radio station, it's hard to do that. because it wouldn't be commercial.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But what
yeah.
I'm saying is, if they'd have done it would have worked if they'd had rather news insert and done the news
Yeah,
line that way.
yeah.
Or like you say, if they'd have done it on a different radio station, they
Yeah.
could have got away with it. But they were tied with the
I think it's because it comes from it's been not translated, but it's been adapted from
yeah
the American
script
for an English one. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, overall, great production. I'd definitely watch it again or keep an eye on the style of theatre and the people that are involved in it.
Yeah, and also I really, really appreciated the ending as well.
Yes.
Because whilst we gave them a standing ovation and they said, like, thank you very much, they went and then they started doing a bit of piano play between them both,
they did.
which was a really nice
Yeah.
end to the whole production.
It was, yeah. It was a very
know.
Laurel and Hardy moment at the end, yeah.
If they play the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a proper little vaudeville act
Yes.
ending, really, yeah.
Scores then, please, Richard, for Murder for Two. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a magnificent murder mystery musical made for two madcap actors, and 1 being a production that murdered itself and not just two. What's it going to be? I'm going to give this production an 8 out of 10.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
As well.
Yes, as well.
So we've both given it 8 points each, which means out of a grand total of 16, that works at... a 4-star review. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be? I'm going to give this a standing ovation because it thoroughly deserved it. Well, they both did.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to ovate exactly the same.
So there we are. That's our discussion of
Murder for Two.
We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
And opinions.
on many theatrical delights in future episodes.
If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing Murder for Two. We saw this production at the Murder for Two was written by John Kinnison.
John?
Joe. I'm just looking through one eye. Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson. Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson. Shall I just go with that? Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson. Book and music. Oh,
Book of music.
book and woman. Oh, book and lyrics. Okay. Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson, book and music, and that's just.
No, you've got it.
Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson, book and music, Kellen Blair. Murder for Two was written by Joe Kinnoson. Oh, I don't know. Do I just get rid of book and music and book and lyrics?
No, because do you want me to do it?
Can do if you want.
I'll do the first part then.
When famous novelist Arthur Whitney is found dead at his birthday. That's right. When famous novelist Arthur Whitney is found dead at his birthday party, it's time to call in the detectives. Right. You did it in one. I don't like you.
You've had all this time to be speaking,
I know.
so you should be more articulate by moving your mouth around, like enunciate.
Brown cow, how now? That was the wrong way around. When famous novelist Arthur. When famous novelist. Ovulist.
Famous obelisk.
Ovulist. When famous... got it in my head now. When famous novelist Arthur Whitney is found dead at his birthday party, it's time to call in the detectives. The only problem is they're out of town. Enter Officer Marcus Moscovich. Enter Officer Marcus
Moscovich.
Yeah, no, it's because I need to.
Do you want me to do the bottom bit as well?
No, I'm
always do
seeing
the
half a
intros?
word because they've got one eye on this and one eye on that. That's better. When famous
Sometimes you could just be prepared.
Oh look,
You
I
look
used to be a
with both
scout.
eyes.
Dib dib dib. The only problem is they're out of town. Enter Oscar for
I think you just start from the top.
yeah. When famous novelist.
I'll just cut all that.
Yeah, you need to. When famous enter Officer Marcus Moscovich, a neighborhood cop.
Leave a bit of a gap after enter. Enter Officer Marcus
Yeah.
Moscovich.
Yeah.
Moscovich.
Recording.
Right, shut up.
That was hard work.
Really was.